More now on our top story, the threat posed to a community of Shia Turkmen in Iraq by fighters of the Islamic State. They've been under siege for more than 2 months and cut off from water and food. Only small amounts of food have been supplied by Iraqi army helicopters. The Islamic State regards the residents of Amerli as apostates, and the United Nations has warned of a possible massacre by the militants. Well, Michael Knight has been a frequent visitor to Amerli in the past and remains in touch with residents. He's a Lafer Fellow at the Washington Institute for Near East Policy. So how close are the jihadists to Amerli?
The Islamic State fighters are about a kilometre away from the village of Amerli, and it's a large village of around 12,000 people. So they're extremely close in to a very packed urban environment, and they're firing significant numbers of rockets into the village, ranging from around 40 a day through to as high as 285 we had in a single day a couple of weeks ago. ISIS is so close to the village that they're able to shoot directly into the helicopter landing zone, which is the single helicopter that brings in medicine and baby milk and other vital supplies and brings out the critically wounded or vulnerable. So it's a very close blockade, and it's a very small, concentrated area into which ISIS is firing rockets every single day.
So some kind of assistance is being provided by the Iraqi government, but why on the whole has the plight of the residents of Amerli been overlooked over the last couple of months?
Amerli is very physically distant both from the Iraqi government seat in Baghdad and also the Kurdistan regional government seat in Erbil. Likewise, there have been other major crises which have overshadowed Amerli, and Amerli was obscure enough that it didn't get the attention that, for instance, the Yazidi refugees did on Mount Sinjar, which was quite an accessible location. It's also about ethnic politics. The Turkmen in Amerli don't get on very well with the Kurds of the Kurdistan regional government area.
But the reason that the Islamic State are laying siege to Amerli is that these Turkmen are Shiites.
That's right. The population of Amerli is largely Shiite Turkmen, and this is in fact the largest population of Shia that are behind ISIS lines anywhere. So this is like a low-hanging fruit for ISIS. If they want to massacre a large number of Shia and spark a sectarian civil war in Iraq, then Amerli is the place where it's easiest for them to do it.
Have other Shiite Turkmen towns or villages been overrun by Islamic State fighters?
Yes, the nearby Shia Turkmen town of Bashir was overrun briefly by ISIS fighters just a couple of weeks ago. And what they did was to seize all of the men, remove them to another location and execute them. They also took away many of the women and children to an unknown fate, some of the bodies having been returned afterwards. And they undertook some very gruesome atrocities, leaving bodies hung from lampposts and then shooting Turkmen civilians who tried to recover the bodies with snipers.
Now, you've spoken about the inability of the government in Baghdad to help, the unwillingness of Turkey to help. Would US airstrikes make a difference? And indeed, are the US State Department, the White House, aware of what is happening in Amerli, and would they be prepared to intervene?
The US government is looking very closely at the Amerli situation because it fits into the same basket as the humanitarian support to the Yazidis. Amerli is an area where a tiny amount of US military assistance could transform the situation. On the 8th of August, a relief column was sent from the north, Shia militia fighters, other Shia Turkmen, trying to break into Amerli, and they got within 4 kilometres of the city. But then they ran into one ISIS tank, which destroyed an entire column of 250 troops mounted in pickup trucks. If a US drone had destroyed that tank, we would already have relieved Amerli and 12,000 people would be safe.
Do you think it's likely that the US will intervene?
I think it's very likely that the US will intervene in the next week or so to help the relief of Amerli. There are strong federal government forces massing south of Amerli about 30 kilometres away, and there are federal government forces about 10 kilometres north of Amerli as well. And all they need is a little bit of air support to get them over that last mile into Amerli to break the siege.
That was Michael Knight, who's been a frequent visit to Amerli in the past, who remains in touch with residents. He's at the Washington Institute for Near East Policy.